Sorry about the light, but like,
oh, that's fine. It's just daytime.
Different time of day, and
it's weird.
Yeah,
I know. I'm still in my little cave though, so I don't get daylight. I'm like Gollum here. All right. Anyway, I started recording, so I'll have to cut all this stuff off, or leave it in. Whatever. Behind the scenes, this is how the ice cave sausage is made. Yeah, raw sausage because it's an ice cave, but it's very well kept. I don't know where I'm going with this. Anyway, let's just start the show, huh? Hey,
yeah.
Welcome to Ice Cave Radio, everybody. How's it going? I'm Doa. With me is Charmer, and we are getting into set 4. Look, our logo is a little bit down. I forgot to move it back from the Boskers thing. There we go. I moved it back up. It's in a great spot now. But yeah, set 4 has launched. Lots of excitement, lots of ships in the space arena, lots of vehicles in the ground arena, lots of pilots going out there and then getting disabling fang fightered. But a lot of pilots living too. And so it's really, really fun. I didn't get to do any pre-releases, sadly, but I did play in my local last night. So we'll talk about that. You did play in a pre-release, so we had kind of opposite experiences there.
Yes.
Yeah, tell me about that first. How was your pre-release experience?
My pre-release experience was fantastic. So as you said, I'm the opposite end. I have played in my pre-release, have not yet had my first locals where I can play with constructed cards, but my pre-release was great. If you are in our Discord, you got to see the deck that I ended up playing. When you open Poe as a leader, and then you also open Black 1, Eject, 2 Tarkins, right? Like you're gonna have a good time. It was a phenomenal sealed pool list. It was a ton of fun to pilot and play. I was also, if I'm being honest, just really encouraged when I saw the turnout. I know part of it is holidays and whatever, but locally, I don't know what it's like everywhere else, but my scene had been like slowly tapering down for a bit, but then I had heard that everyone was really excited for this set. And I was cautiously optimistic. And then when I showed up, we had 18 people for our pre-release, which
awesome.
Was great. And I had a blast. Everyone else seemed to be having a good time as well. So yeah, it was a great time. Helps when you win. That certainly makes it enjoyable. My prize packs included 3 legendaries, including a hyperfoil annihilator, which is also always fun.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I heard about the pre-releases at my store. We had they told me the number was 26, which is really, really good. And then we had about a dozen at our first local or so last night. And we do it on Thursday nights, so it's like, you've got your core group, and then whoever else can make it. I know there's some people that have a hard time making it on Thursdays, but we've got a good little group going. But yeah, it's so you won your pre-release. And I won my first local last night. So we're both coming into this episode winners, right? I played Double Green Vader, which everyone knows I'm a fan of Double Command. I don't know why. It just is. This gene exists within me. I wasn't asked. I never asked for these powers. I was just born this way. So, and when I saw Vader revealed, I thought to myself, wow, he kind of just looks like Wat Tambor on steroids, right? And not just because of the mask getup and all that, mostly because he just makes tokens easier, and then you can still use all the crazy buffing stuff, and you've got stuff like Victor Leader that just buffs everything, and so where Wat Tambor wants your battle droids to die and use that to buff things, and then you do some exploit stuff, Vader you can just straight up go wide, but then also at the same time go very tall. So I was regularly having 4 units on the board at the end of the second action phase, and then I would get 6 to 8 by the flip turn, and then I would have turns where I'd be able to put Vader on like Fett's Fire Spray and then overwhelming barrage it and just do 11 to their board and then hit their base for 11. So it is nutty. It is nutty. I'm still not convinced it's the best way to beat Vader, and I do think it's something where once people kind of know this is out there, they're going to be able to tech against it easier, of course. But it was really, really fun to pilot, and I'll see how far I can push it. But it was a good first experience. So on that note, I've got 3 OP packs to open for winning the local, and you and I both have carbonite packs to open as well. So
yes,
I feel like just in terms of a little pack opening segment, and we'll talk about the episode too. We're doing pack opening, and then we're talking about our day 1 decks. I'm going to talk about my Vader list. You're going to talk about a Thrawn list that you've been working on, And then we're going to do a tier list, and we're going to rank all of the leaders for the purpose of Premier play. I did the tier list for Limited a little bit earlier. Now we're going to do it for Premier. So that's kind of the idea of where we're going for the episode. But I feel like I should open these first because they're going to be exciting, but they're not going to be as exciting as the Carbonite packs probably. I couldn't help myself, and I opened a Carbonite pack last night at the store, and I did get a Hyperfoil red Pilot Vader. And that was very exciting. And a foil tinted for Prestige, so that was cool too. But mostly the Vader, so it was exciting. So I got Shoot Down. We got Director Krennic. All right, nice. I think that's a really solid card. And, foil Millennium Falcon. Nice.
Okay.
Check that out. Ooh, that looks really good.
That might be exactly what my price pack was for OP anyway from the pre-release.
All right.
So I got one, and I had that same foil Falcon, which looks phenomenal.
Yeah, it does.
But I think that I also had the Krennic and the Shoot Down. Shoot Down's another one of those cards that was really surprising me at the pre-release with how well it was performing. Along with that good ATDP that we were talking about.
Yeah, the ATDP is huge. Apparently with the OP packs, I don't know if this is true at all, so take this with a giant grain of salt, but somebody told me like the Han Solo Legendary was like a 3% pull for these packs. I have not heard any numbers myself, but if we take that might be exciting if I pull it. So Onyx Squadron Brute, and we got Leia, okay. And then we've got a foil Shoot Down. All right. Because you get a foil every pack now, which I think is a great change. I mean, we do have to talk about this for a second, is that the OP packs are just miles ahead of where they've been at for the last couple sets, I think, where the card choices were very good. Getting one foil per pack, the change with the starter cards appearing in alternate art treatments or alternate border treatments in the regular packs versus being in the OP packs. I think it's such a huge improvement, so props to Fantasy Flight for getting that done. And the final OP pack, we've got a Swarming Vulture Droid. I'm on my way to 15 of these. We've got Fett's Fire Spray, nice. This is definitely one I want to play set of, and I've got one so far, two so far, and a foil Red Squadron Y-Wing, which is kind of
that's another card that's really good and did very well for me during the pre-release. So
yeah, I think it's great. Put a pilot on it, do a ton of damage. You know, same with like TIE Bomber for the same reason. Like a TIE Bomber. Turn 1 TIE Bomber and Vader is just so good because then you can just start putting the indirect damage on there. And the most important thing is you have something alive to put pilots on, right? The wingmen and eventually Vader or whatever. So that's good. All right, well, there you go. 3 OP packs. A lot of really cool stuff. Like, I'm just excited about all the pulls in OP packs now. It's so nice.
Yeah, even something where you're like, well, maybe it's kind of a gimmick card. The Vulture droids are something where you want a lot of them, right? So like even when they gave us a gimmick card, it's one where that's like, well, you know, I'm gonna need 15 of them at some point.
I do want to build that deck. I have no idea how I want to build that deck. I mean, honestly, maybe that's a Wat Tambor thing. I mean, it might be.
I think that might be a good way to do it. I'll be honest, I want to do it in Twin Suns because why not?
Yeah, for sure. That'll be good in Twin Suns as well, I think, where you can you can put still 15 in there, and that makes it a lot easier to build the other 65 cards or whatever for your 80 card deck. Because now we're up to 80 cards in Twin Suns. I haven't built a Twin Suns deck yet, but that'll be fun.
I have not for set 4 yet, no. Yeah. So I am looking forward to doing that.
Yeah, I've done previous ones, but not set 4. But are you ready? Ready to open a Carbonite pack? You've been waiting on yours for so long. I got to open a box basically already. So you go first. Go ahead.
Do you know how hard it is to hold on to one of these since Saturday?
I do,
because we are recording this Friday, March 14th, so it's been almost a week that I've had to not open this.
No, I know, because and I even got to open some, but I saved one until now. It's been difficult, but go for it. Let's see what we get. Let's see that showcase. Let's see that cereal.
I don't even know what the orders are like here. So starting, I think this is Admiral Trench Hyperspace.
Prestige is in the middle of the pack. So you start out with the leader and then some regular foils and then the Prestige and then the Hyperfoil or the Hyperspace, potentially Hyperfoils.
Yeah. All right. So trying to get this here. So we got a regular foil Eager Escort Fighter.
And I I feel like
Or one
any card
ambush.
can be any rarity. I'm not sure if that's true or
Yeah.
not, but I felt like I got legendaries at different places in the packs. So
All right. Then it was a foil corporate light cruiser.
okay,
It's regular foil. Got the foil Dakar cargo frigate.
all right.
Oh, all right. Foil Grim Valor.
Cool. All right. And oh, that's a good one. That card is really good, by the way.
Yeah, so foil Shuttle ST-149.
Stealing XP from something and killing it because of that is really, really good.
All right, so this is something I'm excited about, as we'll find out later. Foil No Glory Only Results.
I hated playing against that card last night. That card was scary. All right, what is it? Oh, there's your prestige.
All right, so the Prestige is a non-foil Houndstooth.
All right. Hey, you gonna build Boba?
Probably at some point, yeah.
There you go.
Then we have non-foil Hyperspace Torpedo Barrage. Non-foil Hyperspace First Order Stormtrooper. But,
I think that one looks good in hyperspace.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Like, that's a card that's going to be played in a lot of decks, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Echo Base Engineer. Again, non-foil Hyperspace.
Mm-hmm. And you get two hyper foils at the end.
Regular non-foil Hyperspace Gold Leader.
All right.
Almost there. I think this is the last one before the hyperfoils. Yeah, so this is a non-foil Hyperspace Rampart.
I only have 2 of those, weirdly, after opening a whole case. Ooh, all right, nice.
All right, so this I believe is the blue, Resistance Blue Squadron. That card actually did very well for me at my pre-release.
Yeah, the 2 damage is solid. Hey,
and
that's
then
cool.
They hate that ship.
I think that card is
And
going to be
hyperfoil.
super useful.
Yeah, this is a card that feels very very interesting. As somebody who played a lot of sneak attack, especially like in the set 1 meta, the ability for this to ramp things in. Now, granted, you don't get to ready your stuff like they're readying their TIE fighters and so forth, but when you play this and then you get to play something so early, because essentially what this allows you to do is, like, if you want to just give them 2 TIE fighters, you can play a 4-cost vehicle on turn 1.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, I think it is good, and it's just made to work with the old Millennium Falcon too, obviously. And so if you get that, then that's quite good too. Or if you just get one that is just a great on-played. So I do think it is a very strong turn 1 play. Not to mention, you can pay 1 to play this, and then you could potentially play a 3-drop and then have another 1 left over to play a pilot. So you could end up having like a very large swing early on for the cost of 2 TIE tokens on their side of things, which is usually not too bad, depending on the deck. But all right. I guess it's time, huh?
It's time.
All right, let's open this one. Now, I opened a box, and I did not get a showcase, and it's supposedly 1 and 2, so we'll see. I'm just going to hold it up. Oh, Kazuda in hyperspace. Oh, no showcase. All right, covering the wing is the first foil.
That's a card I really like as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 for an X-Wing token, and you give a shield to something else, so it is a lot for 2.
Yeah,
a dilapidated ski speeder. We have the orbiting K-Wing. All right. Air superiority. Okay. I run this in double green Vader. It's pretty good for handling the ground. We have a foil Page Tico. We have a foil, what is this? Timely Reinforcements. Oh yeah, I had this played against me last night, and they made like 3 X-Wings. And it was pretty good. I'm okay with it. And then we have Eject. All right, foil Eject. That'll be fun. I build Poe. And then we have regular old Millennium Falcon. All right. That's cool. I don't have this one yet. So this is the new Falcon that you can put 2 pilots on. So I like that.
Yeah, so you got the Prestige and the OP one.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So then we
have to build a
have
deck with it.
indeed. Then we have the Prepare for Takeoff in Hyperspace Searcher. We have the Black Squadron Escort Wing, right? Or Scout Wing, yep. We've got a Special Forces TIE Fighter. That's kind of neat. And then we've got it's a Gold Leader. Again, I got the one you got. All right, and then...
We just like the Falcon around here, apparently.
Hey, Executor. We hit a Legendary at least. There's the Executor. And then we've got a Hyperfoil TIE Ambush Squadron. Nice. That looks good. Cool. And then the final one is Hyperfoil Harrison Dula. There you go.
See, that's what you get for not putting respect on her name when you and I were talking earlier.
But it's true though. Like I think she's like a good Kuil alternative in your 2-3 for 2 that has Restore 1. You know, she fills that spot and she doesn't necessarily like make you discard cards you don't want to discard from your deck.
She's also potentially a pilot, right? So you get the flexibility of, you know, granted you have to already have a vehicle, but you get the flexibility of putting the stats in either arena.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. Our 2 Carbonite packs. No gigantic hits, but I do really love the prestige treatments on all the cards. That's always fun. So
I need to go get more now.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I think I'm usually a minimum rarity gamer, you know, but because this set is so ship centric, I really, really want to get a lot of these prestige ships to put in decks and things, especially like the Vader one. You know, I really want to get like the Showcase Vader and 3 prestige Victor ones or Victor leaders, and you know, see what I can do with that.
I'll just be honest. The thing that sold me when I saw it was when we have the kind of call back to the old Decipher sideways Executor and Annihilator. When I saw that, I was like, all right, I'm going to have to get me some prestige capital ships. There's just no way around it.
I traded for one of those yesterday, one of the prestige Executors. I traded a Devastator for it because I pulled like 5 of them. I don't know if that was like equal or worth it or not, but it was a non-foil, non-serialized, obviously. But I just wanted the sideways one for the old Star Wars CCG reasons.
Yep.
Well, there you go. Carbonite packs. All right. We're going to talk about some decks?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go and we'll talk about... I've just got this one up anyways. We'll talk about this. This is not quite the list I won my local with last night, and my matches were... It was 2-1 versus Green Vader Blue, which was kind of interesting. They were trying to play a more control-y, sort of slow version of it. And then it was 2-1 versus Luke Green, which is kind of the standard Luke build at the moment, where your fighters do 1 damage, which was a little bit challenging because he was able to take out some of my tokens with just leader ability. Luke is kind of made to be good into Vader, I think. And then, or vice versa, because you've got these things that soak the damage that otherwise your other ships would have taken. And then my third match was a 2-0 versus Tarkin Red. Not Tarkin, Thrawn Red. New Thrawn Red. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was just like, I think this deck just runs over control. So, you know, they were building it in more of a control-y kind of fashion. So this deck just went real wide.
I was going to say, just out of curiosity, were they not running like bombing runs, or did you just not see them?
I'm not sure if they were running them or not, but I didn't see any. So probably not. But they were doing the thing where it's like you get like the double Ruthless Raider stuff and all that, and like, you know, they had a lot of good Thrawn stuff in it, but I think it just takes longer to come online. You know, I think maybe there's a faster version of the list you can build, but
yeah,
they were looking at it more of a slower way.
I mean, that's why I was asking, is because I think that when you run the red right now, you've got to have something where you're dealing with the early game one way or the other. So that's why I was asking.
Sure. Yeah, he had what was it? Well, the First Order Stormtrooper, and then I forget, there was some ship or whatever. But yeah, and like, sure, he could kill a unit or two, you know, but it just didn't stop things from going wide, right? And like, if this deck, if you don't get command and you just flip Vader on 6, then you're really looking for like an overwhelming barrage, because you're going to be doing at least 6 damage to the board on the other side, which is a really, really good OB. But ideally what you do with this deck is you use your 4 resource turn to play like Fett's Fire Spray if you can. And then you use your 5 resource turn to play command. So you play it a little bit off curve, but then you can put Vader on Fett's fire spray right away and then swing for 9 plus the 1 indirect. Yep. And just have like a 9/9 in space. And then the next turn you overwhelming barrage or something like that. So there's other things too. You can go really wide and then play like Dornian gunship. I had like a Dornian gunship do 6 damage yesterday because it just does 1 indirect for each vehicle you have out, including itself. So you can do significant stuff with that. And then like later on in the game, if you get to it, stuff like Vader, Maul, finishers. I won a couple games, 2 games I won with choose sides, where they would put like they would usually put like the pilot that gives things Sentinel on something big, and then I just take it. and so that worked out well. I never even sideboarded in my confiscates, honestly, because I was just like, well, my plan is to just go super wide and just end it, right? So you have your first order TIE fighter. I think that's like the weakest link in this deck. Although if you do draw that and then one of the wingmen, you can do okay. Wingman Victor 2, the one that makes a TIE token, I think that's Victor 2. Yeah, that one is much better, obviously, because then you can get 3/2 and a 1/1 token. But yeah, I mean, like, just getting something to stick in your first round is the biggest thing, and then you're off to the races, right? Where you're making a TIE token every turn. You just have to learn to play not having initiative, because you're never going to have initiative with this deck. And then ECL, I wasn't so sure about, but I ended up really liking it because I would ECL in something like a Magna Guard Wing Leader, just because 3/4 for 3 is good stats, and I would be able to kill a ship that they were going to put a pilot on, So I think in the meta,
looking at your list here as well, you've got the overwhelm and raid unit. So when you factor in you can use ECL on that, and if you've got somebody low enough, then suddenly that just becomes burst damage, right? So I do like the inclusion when I'm looking at your list.
And when you put Vader on it too, even if you sure you put Vader on it, you don't even ECL it, right? It's just out there and you put Vader on, and then you swing for 10. And then if you have to swing into something, you've got, tons of overwhelm. Or you'd swing for 11, actually, with the raid 1. So, yeah, this deck can just go very wide and then suddenly go very, very tall, too. So it's kind of got a little bit of everything. And then the finishers of Vader filling space back up, right? Or Vader finds a Victor leader, and then buffs everything. Or Maul just with a little bit of overwhelm, or choose sides. Like, it's a weird deck in that you go very fast with it, but then you have really good finishing options, both in stealing the units that are being problematic from their side, and then also just playing big scary stuff, right? So I really love this list. I think it's a ton of fun. I'm glad it's working out the way I always envisioned it. I don't know if it's the best way to build Vader. I think maybe red is objectively going to be a little bit better, but I think this is the most legit double green deck we've ever had in the game. I'll put that out.
Yeah, the only thing that jumps out to me, and I'm not even saying it's incorrect, I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure.
What do you feel about Commander Cody with something like this?
He's definitely a card that I want to try to include, but I think the issue is that it felt like he died too easily. He always demands an answer, which is nice, but Victor Leader comes out much earlier and then just doesn't get answered sometimes, and if you get Vader on it, it's a lot more difficult for them to handle. So I thought about Cody, but then I kind of like the 5-drop slots being Dornian, the Assault Frigate, and then Overwhelming, So it's not that Cody would be bad in the list. I think he'd be really good, but some game you don't go wide every game. You try to go wide every game, but I would say like 1 out of 3 games you're just not going to be able to do it because of the other deck, and so 1 out of 3 games Cody just isn't going to be as useful. So I don't know. I'd like to find a way to work him in there, but I just haven't been able to yet. I think that's a good call out, because he definitely was one I had in mind too.
And I would also say I don't think that a list like this wants him to be a 3 of. The only thing that jumped out to me when I was thinking about this is that because he isn't just the bonus, but he also gives everything else overwhelm. Some of the callouts you've had about, if you put Vader on something or whatever, you would get a lot of potentially anyway additional mileage, even if you were like in a mirror and you had to value trade. Like, I almost wonder if maybe it is something that is just a sideboard card where you only bring it in for the mirror, because a mirror is not likely to have a lot of ground presence to answer him directly.
Yeah,
so they
that's
would have
true.
to use like command or something. And again, don't even know if it's correct. I'm just thinking out loud, but that was something where I was like, you know, Cody feels like he would almost always be active, but your drawbacks are, as you said, it's not as directly impactful as some of your other 5-drops, is not findable like Victor Leader is with your Vader, which is a big deal. But I do like that the Overwhelm would potentially be really good in a mirror. So maybe it is just something where it's like a 1 or a 2 in a sideboard. I don't know. But I like this list a lot.
I could see
like a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. That is for sure. I highly recommend it. And you know, if you feel like ECL isn't enough HP, I think you can honestly build it. Even you can go all the way up to Data Vault with this, because 10 more cards, like as long as you keep your curve good, I think it's perfectly fine. Like I think you can run Data Vault with just fine, or a regular green base. If you're looking for a way to just be easier with it. But I think ECL is probably still going to be the best way to run it. But yeah, I could see maybe taking out like the Cody or I could take out like the 2 Mauls and sideboard in 2 Codys, you know, or like you know, 1 Dornian gunship and 1, you know, attack pattern Delta and put a Cody in, or 2 Codys in or something. But yeah, I should find a way to work it in.
I was going to say, especially like for the mirror, right? If your idea is you want to bring in Cody for the mirror, Maul coming out would make sense, because they're less likely to have stuff on the ground that you would ambush with them. So Cody would then just turn on the Overwhelm for space trades or whatever. But,
you know, the other thing that's kind of funny is that Mercenary Gunship is like one of my least favorite cards in this list, because it only has 2 health and you really want things to survive. So I would almost rather have the 1/4 generic ship that I can be guaranteed to swing with than and just so I can make a token, you know, than the 3/2. But the 3/2's in there now because it just trades better with a lot of the ships people want to like put Poe on and stuff. So yeah, I think it's a fun list. I'll let you know how it goes as it develops. I'm not gonna play it every week. I'm gonna work on some other stuff because there's too many things I want to play. But I think if you're looking for a way to, yeah, right, I know. But I'm not gonna get stuck on Wat Tambor this time. I'm gonna play good decks this time around. But you know, I got semifinals in my store showdown with Wat Tambor. So you know, at the end of the day, the Wat Tambor mission was a success. I guess I'll take a top 4.
I just am laughing because I also remember when you said the same thing about Boba too.
Yeah, well, I stopped playing Boba too. I bring him
eventually,
back every once in a while,
but it took a while.
Yeah, so no, it's not. I learned my lesson. Besides, I've got a Holdo and a Lando showcase now to try to build around, which is maybe worse, but also maybe better. Who knows? I'll keep everyone updated how that's going, the showcase project. But yeah, if you're looking for a way to jump into the set, I think Green Vader is really fun. It's pretty cheap to build too. You know, like the legendary Vaders are nice to have, but you could definitely succeed without it. I only played it in like 1 game last night, so it's not an absolute need, you know. So yeah, it's a pretty cheap
when I look
too.
at this, the only legendaries that I would say are what I would consider mandatory would be the commands, just because they're so
the command is mandatory for sure,
impactful about, you know, what you were talking about with your playing it on 5 to speed things up. But outside of that, I think that, you know, if you're missing a card here or there, there's going to be enough that you would be able to sub in for something like this. I do really like this list a lot.
Yeah. Well, go give it a try and let us know in the Discord how it went for you. But let's move on to your list, Charmer. I'm very excited to talk about this one, actually.
Yeah, so I am really looking forward to trying to make Thrawn work. And I wanted to start with this because I've been playing a lot of the villainy, vigilance, and aggression control lists as of late. I've played a lot of Iden. I've also tried to make Krennic work. I also think Krennic might be in a decent spot. I think even Gar Saxon is looking pretty good going into this new set. But
yeah, seriously,
I just really like Thrawn. And when I was looking at his ability to make certain when defeateds become, you know, doubled, right out of the gate, what I realized is that there are some really good early game drops that I wanted to try to take advantage of. Droid missile platform makes an awful lot of sense. It's one of those things that I think is going to be better in theory than in practice. On the one hand, you do get that 4/2 body, and then you're ultimately, when it dies, likely going to be doing 6 indirect damage.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I say it might be better in theory than in practice is because when you're playing against a control deck, your opponent doesn't have a lot of incentive to not just take all that damage to their base, and that is something that you want to be aware of. And so with that in mind, I wanted to ensure I had other ways to stabilize the early game until you could get some of your kind of cooler combo pieces online later in the game. And so when I was looking at cards that I wanted to include or at least test, what I settled on was Desperate Commando. So that's a 2-cost 2/2 in Vigilance. When defeated, you may give a unit -1/-1 for this phase. What that allows you to do with Thrawn is if you turn that into 2 activations, they are resolved independently, so you can split it and maybe clear out some TIE Fighter tokens.
Mm-hmm.
You could use it to just take out something else that has 2 health. It does allow you to get a lot of additional value. Another card that I wanted to make sure I included was the new Onyx Squadron Brute, because that allows you to get a fair amount of healing. And when you combine that with the Client, what that allows you to do is even if you do fall behind, you'll hopefully be able to take advantage of your double triggers when you're looking to stabilize. I also wanted to play with Val. Val is a card that I think is really interesting because you already get a 2/4 body for 2. So she's always been overstated with the potential drawback of the bounty portion.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to double her when defeated, if you put your experience tokens on the same unit twice, whatever they deal that 3 damage to would still survive. So ultimately what you're doing when she dies, if you use the trigger on her, is you're just giving whatever's left a ton of health. And when you think about starting with something like Val on turn 1, and then you get the Client on turn 2, which has shielded, what you're really doing is just kind of turning the Client, if you can trade
6/9.
Val into something, you're just turning him into a 6/9,
okay,
which is, no big deal, right?
Bigger than most leaders,
Yeah, I wanted that. I wanted to make sure I had the 3 copies of Open Fire. I think cards like Open Fire are going to be coming at a premium when we look at this new meta, because you want to be able to kill things before pilots can get jammed on them. On your Vader list, you were talking about how you liked things with more health, and that's exactly why I wanted Open Fire.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to run Heavy. Heavy is a really interesting card to me because the when defeated is kind of just like a bomb that goes off in the ground arena when you use Thrawn on his when defeated, right? You get to deal 2 damage to all of the enemy units in the ground arena. That seems pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Still running Takedown, 2 copies in the main deck anyway of the no glory only results. So if you run into somebody else who has their own decent when defeated, you can take it. I also just really like it for denying the when defeated. Like, not only do you get the benefit, but even if you've already used your Thrawn trigger, what you're also doing is getting that additional value of making sure they don't get the when defeated. So with cards like K2SO still being incredible, I wanted something that could deal with that pretty cleanly. And then after that, you're just kind of looking at all of the bombs that you would expect in a Thrawn deck in the top end here, right? So we've got Chimera, outstanding. Ruthless Raider makes sense. Shadowcaster, which allows you to essentially double twice. Turns out that's a pretty big deal.
Not bad, yeah.
Yeah, not bad. I wanted to run 3 copies of Planetary Bombardment because when you're running Chimera and Ruthless Raider, you want to run something that has the potential to deal a ton of indirect damage to the board. So it's interesting. You were talking about how Command is sometimes better played like not on curve. I think that something similar happens here with Krennic, where if you play Krennic on your Resource 4 turn, you can play Krennic first, and then after the Krennic, you could then play like Droid Missile Platform, because that would then be discounted, right?
Yeah,
so you're going to still get that 5 resources right out of the gate on 4. But also, when you follow that up the following turn with either Chimera or Ruthless Raider, that's going to allow the bombardment on curve, which is something that I think that you really want. There's just a lot of really cool interplay here. The rest of the top end, I wanted to include 1 fleet interdictor. I don't know if that's going to end up staying, but I wanted to at least test it. Similarly, I think Snoke, even without a when defeated, is still well worth the slot. So he's on the
Oh, for
top end
sure.
as well.
Snoke
With
is so
so
good
much
right now.
indirect damage in the list, I wanted to make sure I played Tarkintown as the base with Thrawn.
Hmm.
We've got droid missile platform, obviously. We've got the First Order Stormtrooper, which does the indirect, and planetary bombardment. But then when you also then couple that with Ruthless Raider, which has the targeted, Open Fire, which has the targeted, and even something like Heavy, which does damage across the ground.
Yeah.
I wanted to take advantage of Tarkintown. The sideboard, pretty kind of straightforward, cover yourself. Copies a direct hit because I expect to see a lot of space units early on. Third copy of the No Glory only results. 3 copies of Rivals Fall, which is just my catch-all. In early metas, when I don't know what to expect, I think it's fine to just include the card that kind of answers everything.
Yep.
And then I wanted to make sure I had 3 copies of Bombing Run, which is something I wanted to point out, not just because, you know, I'm following up you talking about your green Vader list, but in general, what I was also trying to do with this list, what folks might notice when they're looking at it, is that it's a good mix of ground and air still. And while I expect a lot of presence in space off the back of this set, I didn't want to abandon the ground, especially because Thrawn is not a pilot. So when you
Right.
deploy Thrawn, you're still going to want something likely on the ground to help protect him, or in situations where they're all space, you might get a scenario where, you know, cards like Thrawn or even just the client, if you can develop them on the ground, you might be able to kind of like run away with just continuing to get value out of them. So I did kind of want to divide my presence when I was building this kind of like version 1.0 of the deck.
Oh, it looks really good. I mean, it makes me want to play it, and it looks terrifying for the deck that I just showed. And like I said, I think the deck I was playing, I think, is gonna suffer once people kind of figure out you can run things just like Heavy and planetary, not what is it, Bombing Run, yeah, that kind of
Bombing
stuff.
Run,
So yeah, Snoke especially. This deck looks very, very good into the meta, and I think it applies to the deck I talked about, but it also applies to Poe, Luke, Wedge, you know, a lot of the low to the ground, you know, heroism space decks. So yeah, I mean, if you want to play something that's going to be theoretically kind of anti-meta, this is a way to jump in, I think, and maybe win a local or two for sure. It's going to be interesting after about a month when people start to go back to some of the older leaders again, and it starts to be a little bit less space centric, right? And then, you know, will you need to kind of tweak this list? Because I feel like this list is a great month 1 list for set 4, and then I'm sure it's going to need a little bit of modification after that. But just for like a place to start with Thrawn, it looks great. And yeah, I love planetary bombardment as a card. I think that much indirect damage always puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. I mean, 8, you can't just put that on your base. That's like a third of your base for most decks.
right.
You know, you can't,
And
you put on your units, your units just die. So
well,
I
I
think
also just kind of wanted to say, like, when you're playing the control game, if you can keep the board, you know, mostly clear, right? Like when you're succeeding, it doubles as a finisher.
yeah,
When you have a
totally.
mostly empty board where they
Mhm.
can't put it on their units, you're just paying to deal a ton of damage to a base. And when you have droid missile platform, like I was saying, yes, early on, I think smart players will be like, okay, well, I'll just take a bunch of damage on my base because I can't afford to fall behind. But when they do that, it makes the later plays of bombardment a lot more difficult for them to manage. And I kind of wanted to cover both ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's super, super scary. Oh, you just disappeared. Why'd you disappear? There you go. You're back. All right.
I don't know. I
was-
didn't touch anything.
I was clicking on something on my other monitor. I wanted to go look at a card, and then you vanished. You're back. You're not frozen in carbonite. That's we have that graphic just in case, you know. just in case we need it. Where is it? We can if you're not watching, I'm sorry, but oh, did I remove that? Oh, there it is. Yeah, in case we need it, there's Charmer and carbonite right there. Yep. But
Yeah.
Thankfully, we don't need it right now. But yeah, I think this list looks really fun, and I think it's one of the best lists I've seen so far at taking the whole meta into account. It is very anti-ship focused to a certain extent, but it's also something I think would just work well in general, right? And it's just got such a mix of good stuff. Like I want to play this list now. I've got other plans first, but Thrawn is one of those leaders. I mean, man, there's so many leaders I just want to play, but I love the idea of having a Krennic out, Ruthless Raider on 5 because it gets discounted by the Krennic, and then on 6 you play Planetary Bombardment for 12 indirect damage. Like that just sounds absolutely nutty to me, you know?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there's some really solid combos in this deck, and I'm gonna have to play it. I've kind of committed myself to playing Akbar next week because I really want to try some things with that leader. But man, maybe I'll have to do Thrawn the week after. Who knows? Well, we'll do a bunch of play testing. But that's
I
great.
will say one of the things that I'm really looking forward to doing at some point is I really want, with no glory only results, to destroy somebody's super laser technician, because
Yeah,
it does not
seriously.
say to like owners or whatever. It's just like you get the when defeated, and yeah,
Yeah.
you can't Thrawn a super laser tech and get double the benefit, but
Mhm.
you can just steal ramp, which I really like the idea of.
That absolutely does work. Yeah. I mean, it's too bad. Like I was always like, man, if you could like double the client's bounty, that would just be amazing. But you can't double the bounties. They are a when defeated kind of thing, but they're not when defeated for the
Yeah.
purpose of Thrawn's ability. But I think it's still a great include in the list anyway because you need the healing. But man, if you could do that, oh, that'd be broken.
Yeah,
That's
so
why we
there
can't do that.
there is I mean, so there is the brute, which you can double. There is
Yes.
also a card that was in place of that fleet interdictor, and it's another one that I will likely want to test at some point. But there is another 6-cost capital ship that is vigilance that has a when defeated of healing from base or units. I think it's heal 3 from base or units.
Which one's that?
It is just a vigilance card here. Let me look it up here real quick.
Okay.
You go to the jump to Lightspeed
I'm
set
trying to
list
remember which one that
on
is.
SWODB. It is, I know it's a 6 cost. It is the CR90 Relief Runner. So it
Oh,
is 6
yeah,
for
yeah,
a
yeah.
4/6.
That's right.
Restore 2. When defeated, heal up to 3 damage from a unit or base.
I was thinking
And
villainy
so
for some reason, but this is just a
Yeah,
regular
no, it's
vigilance.
just vigilance.
That's really
So
good.
that's another one that I was wanting to test. My only concern is I didn't want too many things that costed 6, and you're already on Chimera, Shadowcaster, and Ruthless.
Yeah.
But in metas where you might need to stabilize or might even just need to heal from your own units, it is something that you might want to consider. It's still a capital ship, so it turns on planetary bombardment. It also just natively has Restore 2 as well, which is not bad. So it's another one that was on my radar to test at some point.
I kind of like I kind of like that more than Fleet Interdictor, just straight up, honestly, because I think healing's gonna benefit you more than just the 6/6 Sentinel for 7. And like, sure, you can defeat space units, and that's a way to get rid of some of the smaller like ships, right? But at that point in the game, it doesn't save you from like a leader being on a ship, you know?
Yeah, well, my biggest concern,
I guess
if
it
I'm being
would
honest,
actually still kill
was
that.
actually if the leader doesn't have overwhelm, it does save me, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's
in
true.
an instance where like your Vader doesn't have overwhelm, if you go super tall, I just wanted a big wall. So that's
Yeah.
why I was like, well, I'll run one. Like worst case scenario, it's just a big sentinel, but
Yeah. All right. Wow. I think Thrawn's going to be pretty strong. It'll be interesting to see Thrawn versus Piet, right? Because Piet's going to be not a similar leader mechanics wise, but similar in that you're going to be kind of gearing towards that villainy top end, you know, in a different way. So I'm kind of curious which one's going to come out on top. Because I think with Piet you can run a lot of the same stuff. Although I'd probably go green with Piet instead of red, but you're still going to run like Snoke and Fleet Interdictor, maybe Chimera. Either way, this looks really neat. So you're playing this at your local, right? You're committed?
This is my goal. I am actually missing a couple of cards that I will try to pick up beforehand, so I might have to sub out Shadowcasters that I don't own. But yeah, this is what I would like to play day one. One other neat thing that I wanted to point out as well, I was kind of talking about how Val, the when defeated being doubled, kind of reduces the negative part of her bounty. One other bit to note is that when you play Chimera and you get to trigger something, if you have Val, you also just straight get the benefit without the drawback of the bounty. So when you start considering different ways you can trigger her to give experience tokens to things, I think that she's going to end up being really, really cool in a deck like this.
Yeah, the Thrawn player I played against last night was running Val, and he got her out both games, actually, on the first turn. But I was able to just kill all the other units and just ignore Val because it was my answer to it. Whereas, because like, well, yeah, she'll hit me for 2, whatever. And then you know, I'm not sure if it was unlucky or something, but they never drew anything that could just activate her when defeated. But yeah, I just made sure to keep everything else off the board and played more of a board clear kind of a style than just straight up rush down. And that worked okay in that situation. But we got to do some playtesting. I'm curious how the decks match up against each other. If I don't kill you fast, though, then Snoke will prevent a TIE fighter token from ever again hitting the board. But yeah, it looks fun. Yeah. It looks fun. All right, so are you ready to move on to the meat of the episode? This is a longer episode because we've got more time than usual, which is kind of nice. We've got the beautiful sunset happening behind Charmer there, and you know, I'm in a deep dark cave, so I don't get sunlight, but I'll live vicariously through you. But the meat of this episode is going to be none other than the tier list of premier leaders. That's right. Here's our tier list, browser based as usual. But I did the one for limited, and I felt like my limited tier list was pretty good. I think if you look at the results from people's pre-releases around the community and just from your own experience and all that, I feel like my tier list was pretty good. The only one is maybe I should have had Boba Fett in S. I think that was a mistake to put him in A. And he was still kind of near the top of A, but like I think he was an S tier limited leader. Just because when you flip him and get like a little overwhelming barrage for free, that's just like incredibly strong. So aside from that,
he's really good, and I think it's also one of those things where because he was available to everybody during the pre-release, that also makes things a little bit easier because he's consistent, right? Like you can always count on worst case scenario. That's like my floor.
Probably the best kind of generic leader we've had in a pre-release environment, besides maybe like the original Vader and Luke. But where should we start? We can start just from the bottom left here. We start with Akbar, because we're just going to go in alphabetical order, I guess. So Admiral Akbar, he is a leader that not a lot of people are talking about. And when they do talk about him, they're kind of like, well, why do I want to give my opponent X-Wings? Which I think is a totally wrong way to look at it. I think you make yourself an X-Wing, and you keep using your X-Wings to make more X-Wings, and you put the burden on them of clearing them every turn. And then what you play around that core idea can be a couple different things. You can play very tricky double cunning stuff. You and I were talking about that earlier. You can play a very control-y sort of blue package, or maybe even green package. But I think he's going to be a pretty good high tempo control kind of leader for heroism. I could be wrong, but I've got high hopes for Akbar. I'm very high on Akbar right now. Where are you at on Akbar?
So I'm kind of torn because I think Akbar mechanically is actually a really solid leader, specifically because he's versatile. Like, yes, you can exhaust your own units to create X-Wing tokens for you. You can use him to exhaust your opponent's units, which, yes, you give them the X-Wing, but you're also delaying damage that you would have been taking. On the one side, it is just non-leader units. Obviously, when he's deployed, suddenly he can exhaust even leader units, which is nice. He has 8 health, which is pretty sticky. But one of the interesting bits is when you think about going into this meta, depending on how it goes, if we do end up with a large number of like pilot leaders, what you can do is with initiative, you can still exhaust whatever vehicle you think that they are going to deploy the pilot to. So while you can't necessarily exhaust the leader units, you can kind of preemptively disrupt things as necessary. So I think that he's incredibly versatile. You and I were talking earlier as well. I think that when you look at heroism cunning, like Han was already good to begin with, but I think just in general, that combination got some really interesting new tools with jam communications and the new Ahsoka, combining those with the original Spark, and suddenly you have a lot of hand hate available. I only have really doubts about Akbar when I think about how hard it's going to be to pilot the deck.
Yes, he's going to be
because it is going to be one of those things where to get the most out of this leader, you have to understand turn sequencing and when you want initiative and what are the things you need to exhaust. When do you want to do it to your own? When do you want to do it to your opponents? All of that is not easy. So like I want to say he has the potential to be an S tier leader. I don't think in practice we're going to see him consistently be that, because that would require an insane like level of game knowledge and piloting. So my gut reaction is I think that he'll settle in as like a B leader with the potential to be A or S in the right hands.
I think he's A personally. I think I agree that I don't think he's going to be S. I don't think he's going to be super prevalent. I don't think he's going to be winning a ton of PQs and things, but I think he's going to be good. I think he will win some PQs with the right pilot. And I agree completely that this is a very pilot dependent leader, and I'm not talking about the keyword. I'm talking about the human being playing the deck. I agree with that. But B, I think B is too low personally. I think he's going to be in A.
Yeah,
for sure.
So,
as far as like what he can beat.
Well, so yeah, I mean, again, if you're just talking about what he can beat, and we're talking about whatever, then like I'm fully with you. I think that he's an A, possibly an S. My biggest issue though, and the only reason I hesitate to put him higher is I would, and perhaps this is just a personal thing. When I think of a tier list, I would say that in most cases, if you give either an average player or even a new player a S tier deck or even an A tier deck, they should be able to have decent results with it. And the problem that I have is like, if I give somebody an Admiral Akbar deck, even if it's a great deck or whatever, I don't think that everyone will get decent results with it. And I don't think that it's necessarily Akbar's fault, but I just don't see where the consistency is there.
So you want to include ease of use in your tier list considerations. I never do that.
I think so. I mean, I think that it's warranted just because when I think of like tier lists, I think of like what I would prepare as a player, right? If I was going to a big tournament tomorrow and I wanted to be competitive and I sit down across an Admiral Akbar, am I S tier worried? Am I A tier worried? Or am I middle of the road because I don't know whether they know how to pilot or not, right? Like that's the way that I was kind of viewing it.
I think most people...
I'm also fine with just saying like A and cutting the middle, because like I said, I think that he is way better than people are giving him credit for, but I do think that it is in part due to difficulty to navigate matchups with him.
I think we're into a hot take already with Akbar, but are you okay with putting him in A but then keeping him towards the bottom of A? Because you do it where it's like the bottom ones are kind of on the right side of the list.
I would say a bottom A.
Right. We'll put Akbar there in A. I think he deserves A. I think when most people just look at tier lists at a glance too, they're just looking at like, well, here's how strong the leader is in that, what can it beat? And I think your take is valid too, but I don't know if a lot of people think of that right off the bat,
Yeah, probably not.
We'll put him near the bottom of A though. But there's our A for Akbar. There's our hot take right off the bat, maybe. But we'll remember this when you said he was B. We'll see what the results will be at the end. If they're bad, I'll just blame the players. But let's go to one of your favorite leaders, and this is a leader that nobody is talking about right now because maybe it's like she's not as exciting character wise for a lot of people. But I think she's going to be really good. Asajj seems like a very, very strong leader.
I think she's a pretty firm A. I don't think that.
I agree.
I don't think that I want to put her in S tier yet, but I think that when you look at what her ability does and what it has the potential to do, I would say that anytime that you can present damage to your opponent's board, you're onto something. Like we already saw what Django was capable of doing, and I think that when paired with aggression, like, yes, she has the grit interactions, but when you start saying like, okay, well, it's going to be very easy to activate Tarkin Town. And you and I were talking about that ATDP where one activation of her ability on ground units means that goes from costing 4 to costing 2, not even counting whatever units are there.
Yeah,
There's just a lot of value that she turns on. So I would say she's a pretty firm A, even if she's not being talked about a lot right now.
I agree. I think a lot of people are going to come around on Asajj and put an A. I don't really have a lot to add to that. I think it's strong for all the reasons you mentioned. And also, like, she flips as a 3/4 pilot. on 6, which is not too bad, but like the grit helps too. So yeah, I just think she's got a lot going for her. Blue-black is a great combination this set. If you look at like the Corvus and Iden and all that, like there's a lot of really good stuff I think that synergizes with it. So yeah, I think she's gonna be. All right, Boba Fett, one of our spotlight leaders, our special leaders, as it were. I almost, definitely S tier for limited. I think at least a low A tier, at least low A tier, because I think although you can take the deck that you're supposed to build around Boba Fett, and you might be able to do better if you just swap out Boba for Jango and just swap the base, right? If you go aggression cunning, but Jango and an aggression base versus Boba and a cunning base, I think Jango is going to be theoretically a little bit stronger just because his ability of exhausting things is probably more impactful turn to turn than just one more indirect damage. That said, the like 4 damage overwhelming barrage type effect that you get when you flip leader is good. That's like better than Jango, right? So I don't know. Like I'm really torn on this one. What do you think? I think at least A, but I'm not sure about top of A or bottom of A, or maybe even low S. Like I don't know. What do you think?
I was firmly in the A just because, as you said, I think more people are still going to want to likely play Django, which I think hurts his value, but I don't think it's necessarily because he is like miles behind. I think it will just end up being a preference. I will also say there is a part of me that wonders if at some point we see decks that give you more versatility. So when you have leaders that are pilots, you obviously have to include at least some number of vehicles in your list if you want to deploy them as a pilot, which 9 times out of 10 you're going to want to do with Boba Fett, right? His ability is so strong that if you're not doing that, it's going to feel like a waste. But there is a part of me that wonders if we're going to see people that start running like Boba Fett's armor, and then that, like, as a surprise, they're like, oh, by the way, I'm just going to put him on the ground and slap some armor on him. And now what do you do? Because you were
funny
playing around doing the ship thing.
Yeah.
And I subverted your expectations and went a different way.
It's funny you say that because I saw that happen last night at the local, actually. Someone was running Boba with cunning, and they just had like 2 Boba Fett's armor in the deck too, because they're like, well, I might want to put him on the ground sometime, and if I can do it with the armor, then that's a huge problem for my opponent. And it, you know what, it was because he's like a 6/9 at that point. That reduces damage. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I've already seen it in action, and it was very strong, and it was a very big surprise to the person they were playing against.
All right, well, yeah. So I would say A.
Yeah, I think A, and I would put him ahead of Asajj a little bit. Definitely easier to use if we're including that metric a little bit. But here's the thing. I think Boba Fett's going to be better at the beginning of the expansion and worse at the end, because one thing that's going to be really strong at the beginning of the expansion is just going to be indirect damage, because nobody has any experience with how to handle this properly yet. And so that combined with the pilots, this is just, I think, one of the best leaders to take advantage of the chaos of people not knowing how to allocate indirect damage right now. So I think for today's tier list on March 14th, as we're recording this, he seems top of A. I think later in the set, as people get better at handling indirect damage, he's going to get weaker down to like the middle of A, maybe even low A. But
I think those are all great points, but I was going to put him at the front of A so far, simply because when I look at him compared to the others, what I see is a number of cards that already support him.
Yeah,
that are just individually strong, right? Like when I'm like, hey, I'm going to play Boba Fett, so I'm going to put in Fire Spray,
Yep.
Banshee's cool and all, but what you get from Asajj's partner cards is just not, in my opinion, on the same level as what you get from your historical like Boba Fett supporting cards.
You get a really smooth curve all the way up to like Radiant 7 and stuff like that. So yeah, he does have a very good built-in curve too. It's gonna be strong. When has Boba Fett not been strong? Well, I take it back. When he was heroism, that's when. It's really mirroring the Book of Boba Fett show timeline as well. But yeah, all right. Top of A for Boba Fett for now. We move on to his nemesis in the spotlight, Han Solo. Where does Han Solo end? I think he is potentially a strong deck, but with very specific deck building stuff. I haven't even given constructed, expanded Spotlight deck on much thought yet. Where are you at with this? Because he does have good support, I think.
So I want to preface this by saying I love a good gimmicky themed like deck, but I would have a hard time putting him anywhere but D. I do not think that when you are forced to consider, like, obviously you don't have to build your entire deck around odds, right? Like there's just a necessary critical mass that would be required in order to make it work. But any time that you are being forced to kind of deck build yourself into a hole, what I look at is like, what is the payoff, right? And with, just as a comparison, right, with Han Solo and his, like, I'm going to deploy him as a pilot for each friendly unit or upgrade that has an odd cost ready a resource. When I think about like what my payoff is for that, best case scenario when I'm deploying him on 5 is I have a 1, a 3, and a 5. So I'm at best getting 3 resources back. How is that like anywhere in the realm of what you get out of a Boba Fett every time you deploy him with no setup, no deck building costs, no whatever?
I think that's fair.
I love a good theme and I want good things for this Han Solo, but I would have a hard time saying that I would expect him to do well. And again, you're also just going to be under the phantom, under the specter of if I'm going to play a cunning heroism Han Solo, why would I ever play this one? Until we get a rotation, what is this one giving me that I would not be getting from not only just the other Han Solo, but even I would go as far as to say from other heroism cunning leaders? Why would I play this Han Solo over even like a Fennec, for example, where I can ambush a bunch of stuff? I just don't see the payoff,
because you can still use all those cards that are
resources being that much better.
I mean, I was going to put him in at least C, but I think you've kind of talked me into it, because and I think the argument that really won me over was, why would I play him over other leaders in heroism cunning? Because I think it says a lot that all the stuff he got support wise, you can just play in those other cunning leaders. They aren't Han locked at all. So as much as I love the gimmick too, and I think there is a possibility where you just make a very consistent like double cunning deck that has a lot of stuff out and you get a lot of resources back, but getting that resource flip turn to be consistent, I think, is very, very hard to control as the player of the Han deck, So, all right, you talked me into it. Han goes into D. We might be wrong. I will say there is an option that we are wrong on this, but I think the argument that like if you were trying to be competitive, and this is a competitive tier list, we're thinking about this from the competitive side of things, not what's fun.
Because obviously it's a very fun then deck. Whoa,
then it's like, whoa, he's S tier
because
for sure.
Never tell me the odds.
Yeah, exactly. So I love this leader. I'm very glad we have the design, and not every leader can be a top competitive leader too. I think card games need decks that are just fun as much as they need good competitive stuff too. So glad he's in here, but I agree on the D front. I wasn't going to, but you talked me into it. Good salesman. All right, well, now we move on to one of my showcase leaders from my case, Admiral Holdo, which is funny that I pulled an Admiral Holdo because she's kind of, in a way, the heroism Wat Tambor, in that she has the ability to give a unit +2/+2 for the phase. Now, that said, you have to pay 1 to do it. Something doesn't have to die, but you have to pay 1 to do it. And upon working on building lists around here, I almost kind of wish it was the same ability. I think it's easier to have units die and get that ability for free than find a way to work it into a turn or a game that really pushes you to use your resources as much as possible. So that said, again, giving something +2/+2 is really, really strong, much stronger than people think it is, having just played a ton of Wat Tambor, because you can mess up people's turn math so much. You can ruin people's turns by just a +2/+2 on the right thing. So again, I think a good pilot can probably get a lot of mileage out of her. I add into that though too that there's basically barely enough resistance stuff to play green red, and that's your only option. you're really only going to be able to build green-red with this leader. So you're limited there. Again, you barely only had enough. A lot of the stuff you probably wouldn't be putting in a deck if it wasn't resistance and it wasn't holdo. Sure, Poe BB8 is a strong combo, right? You got eject, but it's like you're putting all that stuff in there, and then you're like, why don't I just play Poe? It's like a better version of this with all the same cards. So for that reason, I'm inclined to put her in D as well. What do you think?
I was going to be slightly kinder. I was willing to put this in C.
Well, let's use your same argument though. What other heroism aggression leader would you, or heroism command leader would you play over her?
I would consider playing her over. So here's the interesting thing. When you want to play resistance stuff, right? What I look at is if you have a situation where you're like, I really want to play resistance, it's her or Poe. And while I think that Poe is just better, if you were ever wanting to go like double green, which I also like, yes, you don't have a firm number of resistance or a critical mass of resistance units, but it would be a great way to offset the resource issue, right? When you're paying one extra resource, going double green where you can play cards like command and offset paying for that, it might be worth it.
Yeah, if you can ramp, yeah. Or I was thinking
also,
you'd run a little bit slower red-green tempo-y kind of thing and then make sure there's some ramp in there.
Yeah, you could do that as well. Ultimately, the real reason that I wanted to go just slightly above is because Stark has not yet seen the film that she is in. And so when we saw her at the pre-release, he said, why is Katy Perry in this set? And ever since then, she's just moved up on my tier list because I chuckle every time I see the card. So I will be honest, I'm biased in this one. I could buy D for sure, 100%. I wanted to give her slightly more respect because apparently it's Katy Perry.
Well,
I will say, I think she belongs in front of Han and D.
I agree. I think I'll put her at I could put her at the top of D, I think. I definitely think she's stronger than Han, but I don't think she's going to have any impact in the meta whatsoever as a competitive leader. I think she's just going to be something that people build if they pull the showcase, or if for some reason they really love Last Jedi and they love resistance stuff. I don't know. Those people exist, but I don't think there's really much of a reason to build her otherwise. So as a quote unquote for fun leader, I think that relegates you to kind of to D, better than Han in a competitive sense, but not enough to be relevant, I think, in any way in the meta.
I will also say, I think she's very good for Twin Suns because when you can just run her and Poe together, right, where you're just kind of getting the full resistance experience in that regard. I think it's a little bit better. But
well, that's way better, because in fact that sounds like a really exciting Twin Suns combo because Poe can just go on a unit every turn, and so she always has a target for her ability. So for Twin Suns for sure, but this isn't a Twin Suns tier list, Charmer. This is a premier tier list.
I know.
Twin Suns tier list would be a very long video, but maybe we'll have to do that eventually. Just every permutation, the week-long video. But yeah, Holdo and D. Let's move on to a leader that I think we're going to rate a little bit higher. Let's talk about Kazuda Onya. Kazuda Xiono. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Kazuda Xiono. I think it's good.
So here's an interesting bit. I really like Kazuda, and I've already actually started doing some deck building with it. I think that this is, again, one of those things where it might take a bit for deck lists to settle down.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Kazuda is kind of in the same spot where I put Admiral Akbar, B or A.
Sure.
I think when you look at what he's capable of, when you consider how fast, how strong his starts can be, like, wow. Like where to even begin?
Right.
The cartel turncoats are already phenomenal when you're factoring in that you might not have to worry about the bounty. When you are looking at cards like you can play your Millennium Falcon and then you can get away from needing to pay for it, right? Mm-hmm. You play the Falcon, comes in ready, and then you use the ability to prevent needing to pay. That's phenomenal. When you look at cards like Corporate Defense Shuttle, I know a lot of people were like, why is this card a rare? Like, why do I care about a 2 cost 3/5 when it can attack? Well, it turns out it can attack with Kazuda. And now suddenly a 3/5 is phenomenal. Same thing with the stolen AT hauler, right? When that was revealed, you and I were like, well, it is a 4/5 for 3, but like, what's the gimmick? And then we saw Kazuda. Val, another great option where, if you don't want to worry about the bounty and you're okay with giving up the when defeated, you still just get the 2/4. When I was deck building, what was the other? Oh, I was including Fugitive Wookiee, right? Which is just a 2 cost 3/3 where you can again negate the bounty if you don't want to. So I really think that there is a lot of really powerful things that you can do with Kazuda. And so I really want to say A personally.
I would be willing to put him in A because the reason being is that I don't think he's super hard to grasp from a player perspective to talk about that. I think that he's got a ton of really good support. If you look at stuff like Outlaw Corona as well, I think that's something that he could really make great use of this set. So you could build him, and I think you could build him multiple different aspects too. I think you could go red. I think you can go green. I think you could go double cunning. Like, I think he's got a fair variety too of lists we could see with him. So yeah, I think he's got the support. If there weren't enough cards out there that had that great value, except for the drawback, and now he can just get rid of the drawback, then I wouldn't put him anywhere near A. But like, he's got the support. Like, the cards are there, I think, to make a good Kazuda deck. So I would put him like below Asajj but above Akbar. And like,
I'm fine with that. I just again, we were kind of talking about like, what are the leaders you would play over Han? Like, I would play Kazuda over Han when I'm looking at Heroism Cunning for sure.
Yeah.
I think another thing that is being lost when you're kind of talking about the conversation is that when you deploy him as a pilot, you're also getting the +3/+3 at a 4. Right? His deploy is a 4 for the epic action, which is incredibly low to the ground. And so again, if you go with something like, hey, I'm going to play the stolen AT hauler on 3, and now suddenly when I deploy Kazuda to it, I'm swinging with this 7/8.
Yep.
Which also I can get rid of the when defeated on it the moment I turn it sideways. Like, wow, that is fast. And then again, when you look at the new cards available to Heroism Cunning, one of the things that I think he is good at being is a kind of a tempo deck where you're playing these things that are undercosted, overstated with a drawback, and then he helps you negate the drawback. And what you gain by jumping out in front is that then, because your things are undercosted, you can weave in other good disruption things like Spark of Rebellion, like Jam Communications, like the new Ahsoka later on, where again, she's just making folks discard a card with a body, but might just be good enough. So I really feel like we might see a good Kazuda deck pop up.
I think we definitely will. I feel very comfortable putting him in A. I know someone personally who's working on, Ninja Ferret, who was on Conquer the Cave, both as a player and a caster. He's working on a Kazuda deck, and he's been very, very excited about the leader since it was announced. And based on what he's been working on and experiencing, I think it's going to be good. All right, let's move on to Lando, my other showcase from my case. I want to put him in B. I'm going to put him there for now, and we can talk about it. He makes a shield. He has at the same time more hoops and less hoops to jump through than like a Luke Skywalker, which is, I think, the leader that you'd automatically compare him to. Luke can pay 1 to put on a heroism unit that came out this phase. He can put a shield on a unit that came out previous phases, but you need to have a ground and space unit out there. I think there's a lot of cards now, especially if you look at like green, that you can have a good amount of things in your deck that creates space units and has an effect, or creates a token and has an effect and all that. So you can use these effect plus token cards to set up playing something in the other arena and giving something a shield. So I think he's good. I think he's probably better than people think, but I think he's going to be difficult to build and difficult to play too. And I think he's going to suffer from consistency issues when you're actually playing him, because you're going to have that
Yes.
really good balance. And so building a deck that gets around the consistency issues that he just naturally has by the way of his leader ability keeps him out of A for sure for me. I suspect that if people put the time in with him, he's going to, and I intend to build him at some point, but I think he could be like B. Maybe he could even get up to like A if you're really good. But I think just in general, he's going to be like I would say kind of B tier. What do you think?
So I would put him in B with an asterisk of, as we get some more sets, there is entirely a possibility we could see him jump to A or even S potentially. And my reasoning for this is, when you look at the things that activate him, we don't have a lot that kind of do it on their own. I think I mentioned it to you once, but I'm always on the lookout for cards like the new uncommon Poe, where if you deploy the Poe unit to the ground, it also creates an X-Wing token. And then if you want, you can attach him as a pilot to something. But if you don't, right, you have turned on Lando with just one card. You have a ground unit and you have a space unit strictly from playing Poe, which is great. And if we can get a couple more of those, I think that Lando becomes much, much better. But the thing that really feels strong to me versus, say, the Luke leader, when you were talking about comparing to that, is that we get to choose where this shield token is going with no hoops to jump through in terms of heroism or whatever. And the moment that you combine Lando, I think Lando fits very well with like green, for example, or cunning. And the reason that I would choose either of those is ambush. When you play a ground unit, and then if your opponent plays something to space and you follow it up where you're playing something with ambush in space, but now because of Lando's action, you can also give your ambush unit a shield token. Well, now you're just playing removal on a body for one extra resource every turn. Right. And so if we can get enough ambush support and enough things that are either sticky, again, it's kind of funny, right? There was a lot of people that were saying that the 2-cost 3/5, why would I play it? Kazuda is one option, but I'll also tell you this. If I play a corporate defense shuttle just out in space and I haven't done anything where you have to worry about it, you're not going to remove it on your own. And so if I play that, and now every time I play a ground unit, I can have my Lando give anything a shield token, well, that's pretty valuable, right?
Yeah.
I think that when we have more people play with him and when we get more cards to potentially support him, he has a lot of room to grow. But I think where I would put him right now would be B.
He also flips on 7, which is long. That is a late flip, right? So he's a 5/7 leader. That's okay. I think the tricky thing is, like, you compare him to like the Vader leader that flips on 6 and +5/+5. He flips on 7 as +5/+5. He can't shield himself. I agree with everything you just said, but yeah, I think I would still, I would definitely still keep him in B. Yeah, I think B is a good spot for him for now. But I'm excited to build him. That's the leader where I'm kind of hyped to see what I can come up with, because you've got stuff like the new event that creates an X-Wing token and puts a shield on something. So you can do that. Put a shield on. Can you still put on the X-Wing token you make? I'll have to look. But if you can, then that's a good way to just stick a space unit that's going to probably stay around to then kind of activate his stuff. Or stuff like close the shield gate if played in a timely manner. There are ways I think you can stretch the game long enough to where his 7 flip is not as much of an issue.
Yeah, I was just going to say, whenever I am rating leaders that flip late, I tend to give a pass to the ones that are vigilance, just because like you're going to want to likely play things that extend the game. We've got a number of units that we can play with Restore. We were just talking about the Hera thing, right? Well, if I'm playing Lando, I think I'm already incentivized to play both the Restored Arc as well as Kuil, because I want to be able to play something in either arena one way or the other with Restore to help me like buy that time. But then also when we get up and running, being able to give my units with Restore Shield, make those trades, keep them alive. Well, yeah, I can probably live to where I can deploy a fat Lando. So
yeah, and then you can it's fine. Yeah, I agree. You have like Concord Dawn Interceptors, Village Protectors, the whole Jedi package like Yoda, Kanan, Luke, like the 7-drop, Legendary Luke, Obi-Wan. Like, I think you can kind of just play that style and just extend the game for a long time, extra long time with shields. And, you know, possibly at some point you get to the point in the game where you have a board out, they have no cards left in hand, and then you're just giving things shields repeatedly every turn to just kill whatever they play. So I could see him being able to just lock down the board. And then if you think about the Nebula Ignition card, the kind of generic super laser blast for 9, it defeat each unit that isn't upgraded. Your shield tokens count as upgrades, so you can get to the point in the game where you can lock it down enough that some of your stuff has shield tokens, and ideally their stuff, you know, they're more vulnerable to it, and so maybe even you could work one of those in the list. Just things I've been thinking about with it, but he's got potential for sure. But I think it's hard to figure out right now. So,
you know, we're talking about his late deploy. I happen to look up, and his little subtext, his subtitle is literally Lando Calrissian buying time.
Yeah. With shield tokens and all that. Yeah. So it's but you know, and he did, that was his thing in the Battle of Endor, right? He was just trying to buy time until the shield generator was taken out by Han and the gang down on the planet. So, yeah, it is very thematic. I like that. So, we'll see how it ends up. I like that he makes the ship that he's on a Sentinel too. I think that's a very strong flip ability. But I would say out of the 2 showcases I pulled, definitely the one I'm a little bit more excited about building. But let's move on to Luke. Luke Aggression. I feel like we're really getting into a strata of B tier leaders here, because that's where I would put Luke as well. What do you think?
I'll
just drop him here for the moment.
I think that's fair. I think that what Luke currently suffers the most from is that he is this set's Bo-Katan. When I think of this Luke, I think of like, what was Bo-Katan? Well, you play a bunch of Mandalorians, and then you kind of get to this like deal 1 damage to a unit as your benefit as a result. And all we've really done is we went, okay, instead of Mandalorians, make it fighters,
which is a better trait.
Is a better trait, to be fair,
support wise.
But ultimately, we're still doing the exact same thing. And so what we have is we have an aggression leader, which cares more about like a mid-range kind of control the board style than just true like aggro rush their base down.
Yeah.
So if you want to play this, I think Luke is a fine leader. I think that we might see people who absolutely make it work, but also from that same thing we talked about earlier, where like, why would I play this over other leaders? Well, I think Poe just kind of outclasses him right now.
Honestly, I feel like Wedge too, even though Wedge is in green, like you're going to be, both of those are faster fighter based leaders, you know, or pilot fighter heroism based leaders. So yeah, I agree. I think Luke can be strong. He just won't be as strong as definitely Poe. And, you know, probably Wedge too, I think. Spoiler alert. But so he could end up being a leader that's kind of in the bottom of A. I could see, you know, where it's like if we put Poe in S, which I think we probably will, you know, he could be behind that in A. That said, again, like this type of leader has never found great success. And again, I think this is probably the leader of this variety that has the most support that we've seen. But I don't know. I would still maybe put him above Lando. What do you think?
I think that's fair. I think that his deck building requirements are a little easier to
pilot.
Make work.
Yeah, I'll put him above Lando. I think that's fair. All right. Well, what do we think about Captain Phasma? Speaking of leaders that need specific trait support, and it only deals damage to a base.
So, well, until you flip, I really like this leader, and I was so excited when she was revealed, and I was like, I want to build around this. And then when we got to finally see the full set and I started looking at what was available, what I quickly landed on is that we need more. She's going to need more sets. Personally, I would put her in C.
Okay. I agree.
Strictly because while she, I think, has a decent enough ability, like, yes, it's just a base, but I think that's what you want when you want to be aggressive. And while there are some good first order units, like I really like the new first order Stormtrooper, Allegiant General Pride, when you have initiative, is kind of a house when you're looking at what he can do. The issue is when I was deck building and I did the like sort by first order, You basically want to play every first order unit printed to date with the exception of like one or two. So the deck is very thin on creativity,
It's
right?
the same
like,
as Holdo and Resistance, right? I just think that Phasma
Yeah.
has just a little bit better stuff overall, and better stuff you're going to
Right.
probably put in the deck with it too.
Yep,
But
I would agree.
same thing. We're like, are Phasma and Holdo playable based on the amount of trait stuff that they require that we have in the game right now? Yeah, sure, they're playable, but are they going to be good? Nah, not really. They need more support down the road, and you know, Phasma's just slightly better, I think, on the just straight up hero ability front. So, yep, I think C's a good spot for her. Let's move on to Piet, who I want to put him in I want to put him in B, with the possibility of maybe even like S if there is a very oppressive fast capital ship deck, because I could totally see that happening, but I think he's just going to get rushed down by a lot of other decks in a very aggressive meta. So I am inclined to put him in I would put him honestly maybe towards the bottom of B. I know this is crazy because everyone's very excited about Piet, and you should be excited about the ability to play capital ships early, until you realize that playing one big unit per turn really opens you up to a lot of risk when it comes to removal in the game. So I think, and also people just going wide and just going around you essentially, you know? So I think the list is maybe out there, but I'll put him in
my
B
hot
for
take
now.
is, I think that he is bottom of A is my hot take.
Bottom of A.
But
Okay.
But very specifically, if I was building Piet, the only way that I would even consider building Piet right now would be green red.
Yes.
And I think that it would be a requirement to run like bombing run in the main deck, 3 copies of open fire. I would want all of my early cards to be removal, or here until the meta settles down, I would even be running like the OG interceptors, where I could potentially remove a unit with getting a body, anything where I'm just stalling until the ships are online. Because I do think that once you get to where they're online, Devastator is an incredible card. Obviously Bombardment, Overwhelming Barrage, like we have these big board wiping abilities, but you have to be in a position where they still matter. So I say if you play him very specifically green red with an eye toward making sure that everything you're doing is getting you to that point, I would put him at the bottom of A. But I think B is also fine because I have not seen a lot of that version floating around. And I would be very concerned if I was Piet. I would be very concerned about, for example, running into double green Vader. I would be very concerned about running into Sabine, Poe, etc. Like those are going to be fast decks that will absolutely pummel you in the early game.
I could maybe see running blue with him too, but I like the idea with red, especially because Planetary Bombardment I think kind of pushes red to the forefront for me. I think if you want to build in blue, you're not wrong, but I think red will probably be stronger.
No, my hot take is that you're wrong if you want to play. If you want to play green villainy vigilance, I think that there are better leaders. I don't think that what you get by playing your capital ships. Well, but here's the thing: like we've already been playing in a meta for a year now, where Avenger is still a top end removal option. We've played in a meta where we've seen cards like Relentless still matter. Playing them like a turn or two earlier hasn't really, in my opinion, been warranted enough to like give up what your leaders, if you played other leaders anyway, what they would benefit you for, right? Like why would I want to play Piet if I could still play Kira or Krennic or Iden or whoever with green and more likely survive and still get to play my big capital ships, right? So I think that the red version makes sense because you want to play them early so that you can turn on Bombardment specifically or Devastator early.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And there's so many good capital ships in green anyway that you don't really miss out a lot. Like I said, I think red's a better way. I will say I don't think you can. I don't think blue is a mistake, because I think if you build blue, you can also put a different sort of early game removal to kind of get to that same spot. But just the fact that planetary bombardment exists for me. That is the main thing that pushes red for that. But so I've got him at the bottom of B. You want to put him at the bottom of A. Would you put him below Akbar?
I would, but I think we could split the difference and we could just put him at the top of B.
All right, I'm fine with that. Let's do that.
That's I think a good compromise where.
Well, it's like where if someone's at the top of a tier, it's like they could either be here or they could be here, you know? They could either be at the top of that tier or the bottom of the tier above. All right. Well, Poe, S tier there. We're done, right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
Poe's just I think he's the best leader in the set. Getting to bounce between multiple ships during a turn is kind of crazy. You know, being able to eject him to the ground, get use out of him there, get him back without, you know, using his epic action. Like, there's just so much you can do with him, and there's so much support as well because he's not resistance trait locked. He works with all the great heroism, aggression, space stuff that's existed since the first set of the game. He is like
I would put him lower if he didn't also get amazing additional support on top of it.
Exactly.
Like the new Y-Wing is so good by itself, and then when you can put Poe on the new Y-Wing, it's insane.
Right? Yeah, I mean, Poe is he's just so strong. And also fun too, and also not super hard to play. Like I think if I were saying, "Hey, I'm going to go and try to like win a planetary qualifier," if that was my sole goal in set 4, I would just be jamming Poe and learn to be a Poe expert. Poe green and never look back. I think we finally got an aggressive leader that can contest Sabine for like top aggressive leader. For sure. So yeah, Poe S tier, no doubt in my mind. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with us with that. And if they are, fight my Poe. All right, let's go to fight my Poe. It sounds like I'm saying something else, but I'm just saying like my Poe deck. That does sound like it means something else, doesn't it though? I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I was laughing. I was weird. Like, oh, all right.
Fight my Poe. If you put that on a shirt, you're going to get beat up by somebody. All right, let's look at Rio Durant. Rio Durant, I think, is another one of those leaders that's not being talked about enough because giving something Saboteur is just really, really good. With shields, with Sentinel going around, like the fact that you can give something Saboteur, I love, but that's kind of the extent of it with him. So he seems to me like another B tier leader, like.
You have him that high? Wow.
Near the top. I do, because I think I really value Saboteur, you know? And we know that cunning villainy is a strong combination. But that's generally the problem is like I look at this and I have him like just slightly in front of Holdo in my opinion. Oh, really? Oh, he's not D. He's not D.
I don't know why.
No.
I don't know why I would ever play Rio over, you know, Django or some of the other like Cad Bane, because when I look at his ability, like, yeah, you get Saboteur and you get the +1, but I also have to pay a resource for it. And if I'm playing him in Cunning, I'm already, I don't have a lot of additional extra resources because a lot of times I want to play some of Cunning's cheap events as like combat tricks, which I think is really important. I don't like that he is like kind of transport based. Like, I think Saboteur is good, but it's not nearly as important in the current meta as it has been in the past. Because like, when was the last time you ran into like a bunch of Sentinels? Like, you run into them from time to time, but I don't know. I don't even know if I like him more than Admiral Trench, let alone like leaders from previous sets. So.
I think I like Trench more, but I would still, I mean, yeah, sure, you'd play other stuff, but if this was like a total tier list of all leaders in the game, then yeah, sure, Cad Bane, Django, they'd all be up in like A and S and all that. But I don't think Rio is bad enough to warrant a D, you know? Are you telling me that Rio Durant is worse than Captain Phasma?
I believe so, yeah.
I
because
disagree.
Phasma doesn't require a resource.
Sure, but like her deck building is so much more limited. You can build I think you can build a much better set of cards that can still use the leader ability with Rio.
I hear you, but I would say that that's not reflective of like the leader though. That's the card pool. And
sure. But that's what we have to talk about with the leader though. The card pool is a huge part of the leader.
But then I'm right back to like I would just play Trench.
Yeah, but like, we would play Kira over Piet if we were going green, but we wouldn't put Piet in D, or like Luke didn't end up in D, even though we've got Poe and Wedge, right? So I think relative strength. I think Rio, if you build a good Rio deck, he's going to be able to hang with Luke. He's going to be able to hang with, a Piet deck, I think. And that's a big part of it too. Is like what decks is he gonna be able to match up with? And I think you'll have a decent matchup as just a generically built, cunning villainy leader until like a lot of this list.
I mean, yeah. I just when I look at his like as a leader in a vacuum, when I look at his stuff, like his stat line is just way below par. Like he flips on 5, but we either get a 3/5 saboteur or we get +3, +5, maybe
His
+4
leader
if we have
stats are very
transports,
bad.
right?
You are right
His leader,
there.
so like
Yeah.
his leader stats are bad, and then when he's not flipped, we also have to spend a resource when we activate him, right? Like
Yeah.
if he was not supported by all of the amazing cunning villainy stuff that already exists, like he's just bad. Like
He does have one of the most hideous looking showcase cards in the game too. I haven't seen it before. Just now I clicked on it. It's like, oh my goodness. That's some nightmare fuel right there. But I'll link it to you so that you can see what I'm talking about. But have you seen it?
Yeah, poor Rio.
Yeah, I know they did him dirty. But I think I still think he's better than Holdo though. He's better than the +2/+2 for 1 resistance thing and all that.
Well, then that's why I was saying like I would put him
at the bottom
in front of
C?
Holdo. So yeah, we can put him there.
Okay. Because I think he's better than this tier.
Because I think where you were trying to put him is where I would have put Trench, and that was my problem. Was like,
okay, well we'll get to Trench soon. That'll be an interesting conversation too, because he's one that a lot of people are talking about. But we'll put Rio and again, like bottom of C is also essentially top of D. Remember, the ends of these tiers are essentially overlapping with the ones below and above. But let's talk about Rose. Healing 2 on a vehicle sounds great, but it's like isn't it? Let's see. I need to double check something with the leader to remember it. Let's see. Yeah, that's right. Heal 2 with the vehicle that attacked this phase. And that little part of the end of the leader right there is what ruins it for me. A vehicle unit that attacked this phase. Because there's so many vehicles that do damage to themselves. And there's so many things where it's like, I can put out a sentinel and then, heal it up. That sounds really good. But the fact that you need to have attacked with the vehicle kind of ruins it for me. Unless you're running like a ton of ambush or something, then I guess maybe you could get some value. But I feel like Rose is very firmly bottom of C, if not D.
I also think she belongs in C. I think that you already talked about one of the 2 points I was going to make. One, I think that she's better than she looks when paired with ambush. So like if I was going to build a Rose deck, like if I opened a showcase and I wanted to or whatever, I would be looking very long at cunning or command, more likely command, because when you look at those ambush cards,
for sure, command, yeah.
They tend to have more health. I also think that you just have more vehicle options there. But even it's so weird, right? Like one of the cards I think that is actually like amazing with a Rose list is the neutral, the 3/5. If you have another vehicle, then it gets ambush.
Yeah,
for 4. Something like that is I think fine with Rose. But the other thing that I think is worth noting, because we have seen in the past with OG Boba, where sometimes just like raw stats are enough. She is still a 4/6 when flipped. I know it's not 4/7 like Boba. She's a 4/6 when flipped in Heroism Vigilance, which has a good card pool. So I wouldn't put it past her for her to be like slightly better than she looks.
Sure.
But I would not expect her to win a bunch of events, right? I would not expect her to have high representation at tournaments. And so for all of those reasons, I would put her in C.
Yeah, I think C. There's a couple good ambush ones, but you've got like Escort Skiff. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
You need another command unit. Rogue Squad and Skirmisher is a little bit expensive, I think. Yeah, like I mean, it's just
Yeah, it's the
yeah,
skiff, it's the 3-5 neutral, it's stuff like that.
and two,
I also think that if you go with green, you also get you get the smuggle card where you can give ambush to something. You have ECL where you can give ambush to something. So it doesn't have to be those. You can still open up to other vehicles and just kind of look at where you want to get your immediate value. But
yeah.
yeah.
You know, to be fair, like if she didn't have that line, she might be just like too strong. It is vehicle lock. No, I don't think she'd be too strong, but she'd be, I think, if you took out that attack this phase part of her leader ability, that bumps her up from like C to probably like A, you know?
Yeah.
But the fact that she's got that attack this phase thing, I think limits her a lot. So yeah, I think C tier is fine. Maybe somebody will put together a good Rose Tico list. I don't think it's impossible, but you know, I think what you could use timely intervention, but yeah, I think C. I think there's not a lot more to talk about it right now. So let's talk about Thrawn. Thrawn feels A to me, but where in A would you put him? Do you agree with A?
I think A is fine. I think he probably belongs between Akbar and Kazuda.
Yeah, I was gonna say not super high in A. I haven't seen any evidence that he's gonna be like a top tier leader, tier leader. But I do think he's good. But it all depends on, if you're able to get the when defeateds to go off at a certain time. He's also going to be one of those leaders that has a higher burden of like player skill too,
Yeah.
So.
And that's exactly why I was putting him in that like Akbar category. He's definitely one where, I could see him be B as well, just like I could with Akbar. I think that the ceiling for the leader is very high, but I would say piloting is going to factor a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. I think that's fine. He's definitely a leader I'm going to be watching very closely, though. He's one that could jump up to S with the right list, and if people kind of figure out the guide, Yeah, I think bottom of A is probably a good place for him here, or near the bottom anyway. A is still good. All right, Trench. Let's talk Trench. A lot of people talk first about being able to deploy him multiple times per game. That doesn't start until at least 6 resources. So what do you do until then? There are a lot of ways in green to bring things back. I did see someone trying to play him with Droid Manufactory yesterday, and there was one point where they got 19 battle droids out just with all the stuff they played, and they still lost. So. That, part of that might have been pilot related, but I think Trench is going to be maybe the best gimmick deck of the set, if you know what I mean,
Yeah. I would definitely put him higher than Han. I think that when you look at the interactions specifically with command, what you have is a lot of ways to bring things back. We have the new card where you can bring vehicles back, but they take 1 damage. Well, who cares?
Yeah, right.
I just think that
there's the one that you can put some cards back on the bottom of your deck and produce that many battle droid tokens. I think that's good too with him.
Yep. I just think that when you look at what's required, because the other reason I think green is you want to speed yourself to 6 where you can start playing him, right? So you want to probably run him, like you could do it with Droid Manufactory. I also would buy the argument where you still run him with ECL so that you can like ambush in your super laser attack just so that you would get there faster.
Agree.
But ultimately, even when you get there, and this is my biggest problem, it's like even when you get there, you're going to churn through a bunch of cards. You're always going to have a lot of great options when you're navigating your turn. But ultimately, what you're getting for those like 3 resources is you're getting a 4 or 5 on the ground every other turn.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because even if you play him and then he dies, what happens is he comes back, and though that's not an epic action, he still comes back exhausted, right? Like when your leader's defeated, he's exhausted. So you have to wait at least 1 more turn before you can replay him. And so when you factor in stuff like that, if he had 1 more health, I would feel differently as well. But when cards like Takedown hit him right out of the gate, I just don't think that yeah, you can do it more than once, but it's one of those, like, a lot of times when you play your leader, that's you trying to pull ahead in the game. And if you don't pull ahead, then what is different between him versus any other late game bomb that would also finish a game, right? That's where my mind is.
I agree with all that, but I still kind of want to put him towards the top of C, because the thing is if you go green yellow, Separatist has a lot of very, very good cards. Droid Commando, the ambush one for 3 that does 4 damage, super good. A lot of recursion with things that bring back from the discard pile. You've got Palpatine's Return or whatever it is, like Emperor's Return, whatever it's called, that you can bring, you know, like a Vader or Palpatine back. So I want to put him kind of the top of C, and maybe even bottom
that's fine.
of B.
I was going to say earlier when you were trying to put Rio in B, I said that's where I would have put Trench. So I think top of C, bottom of B.
I didn't want to
fine.
put Rio in B. I wanted to put him in C. You want to put him in D, but
well, yeah,
I think top of C, bottom of B is fine. I just really, after playing, the thing is, playing a ton of Wat Tambor made me realize just how many good Separatist cards there are, and that was only in green. So I think Separatist is a trait that just has really great support, and that I'll be fine with him at the top of C, but I kind of almost want to move him to B. You know,
I'm fine with either of those positions, as long as he's above Rio Durant. That's all I wanted.
Oh, no question there. Yeah, I want to be spicy. I'm gonna leave him in the bottom of B. We're gonna put him at the bottom of B here. Yeah. I think he's good. I just think he's a deck that you're not going to use a lot of jump to Lightspeed stuff, you know. Let's go to Vader, Green Vader. I think he's really good. I think you can run him the way I ran him, which is just to go super wide and buff things.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling you can run him in. You could even do like an exploit package where you were just using those tokens to just play out big stuff, like the 8/8 on the ground, which is also a vehicle that you can put pilots on. So I think he's got multiple different build paths. The person I played against yesterday that was playing him with blue kind of made me think a little bit. Can you play him in a little bit slower fashion? And like, maybe you can. So I think he does have that versatility. I think he's going to be, that said, I think he's going to be a very good leader early in the set. And then once people start to tech for more big, wide token stuff, he's going to fall off a little bit. But
I'm actually kind of sad that you mentioned one of the things I was going to talk about, which is
okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Blue version.
Yeah.
So I personally, I think he is S but below Poe.
S
and the
but
reason
below
why,
Poe. Okay.
Yep. And the reason why I think that is because I think he might independently be the most versatile leader of this set when you consider how easy he is to turn on.
Mm-hmm.
And how he doesn't require a resource. Like, this is another reason why I have the problem with Rio. Why does Rio cost like 1 resource, but Vader can just give you tokens with just turning him sideways?
Yeah.
When you look at, like, you can go double command and go super wide like you did. You can go with red aggression where you're just getting a free unit every turn.
Mm-hmm.
And really the only thing you're trading off when you do that is you're kind of accepting you'll never have the initiative unless you purposefully want to end your turn early.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise,
I will say, once you get good at playing without the initiative, it doesn't even matter. Like, I could care less about the initiative in Star Wars Unlimited right now, because I've played so many leaders that just don't get it ever, like Boba 2 or whatever, but Wat Tambor, so it's like, once you learn how to play without the initiative, you're fine, right? You'll know what turns you really need it, what turns you don't.
What I wanted to say is that also, like, while those are really cool, like, I think pretty obvious ways to play him, what I'm most interested in seeing is when you combine him with cunning, for example. Well, now you have command and you have cunning, which means you have a lot of ambush, which means you have ways to activate Vader while kind of playing a control game plan.
Yep.
Similarly, when you go with vigilance, like the 1/1s a lot of times with vigilance, what you give up when you're playing the control game is, like, you either play 1 unit or you play 1 removal thing, and then, like, you're just kind of playing whack-a-mole until you hit your late game. what you have the potential with Vader is like if you start with something like an Inferno 4, right? Just standard whatever opening. But now when you get to swing with that and you play a removal card the next, turn or whatever, and you get a 1/1, and if you rinse and repeat that even in just a couple of turns out of the game, well, like you're snowballing faster from a control standpoint. Which is not to be underestimated. I really think that Vader is incredibly versatile, and we will see this Vader played a number of ways. I really do think
agree.
that he is S tier.
Yeah, and that's why I was kind of saying at the beginning I would put him towards the top of A. The only thing that was keeping me from putting him in S is just because I figure people are going to learn how to mitigate the things you can do with the tie tokens, and so that's gonna push him down a little bit. But I want to believe he's S. I would like to put him in S. I'll put him in S. I'll put him in the bottom S. I'm just worried. Like I said, I'm worried people will start to learn how to play him into him too well. But I do think his versatility alone makes him like better than Boba Fett. The top of A for sure. But yeah, let's just put him in S. I feel like we have to have two leaders in S, and I think this is the only other leader that you could make the argument for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I was just about to say also when you're looking at like the heroism and the villainy side of things, like there's not another villainy leader I think is better than him in this set.
Yep.
Just the same way I don't think there's a better heroism leader than Poe in this set. So
yeah, he's going to be a fun one to just experiment with. Let's move on to another villainy pilot. Let's talk about Major Von Reg, which was doing really well in pre-releases, I suppose, which, isn't too surprising. He's got a good ability that works with a number of different card pools. So yeah, I'm not too surprised. I think he's like, what? Let me look at the leader again. Yeah, I mean, his ability doesn't cost anything. Again, sorry, Rio. But I would maybe put him like top of B.
Yeah, I would say pretty firm B. I think that what you get out of him is that he's very good in limited when you're probably jamming a bunch of vehicles anyway.
Yeah, definitely good.
One of the other real benefits, just kind of like with Kazuda, that I think is underappreciated is his deploy for 4, where you're getting, the +3/+3, and technically it's +4/+3 when you have one other unit.
I just think if you're looking at space villainy leaders, like Boba Fett's going to be run with red a lot of times, and he's just better, And like when I look at it from that perspective, I think in a premier format, right, which is what the tier list is, Boba's just obviously better. If you're going to be in the air and you're going to be villainy, and you're going to be aggressive, but
yeah,
that says I think he's still good though.
Yeah, this is going to be maybe a hot take. I think Major Von Reg would actually be an A tier leader at a minimum if he were a heroism leader. Because what really stands out to me when I'm looking at what he wants to do is the quality of like 2 and 3 space, like 2 and 3 cost space units. Sorry, my brain's going faster in my mouth. When I look at Major Von Reg and I'm like, man, if I could play him with like, my deck containing A-Wings and the new Y-Wings and Black One.
Oh, yeah.
And all of these amazing things where like I'm playing them all early. And then when I look at the villainy side, it's not that villainy doesn't have early plays. They just are not, in my opinion, as good.
Well,
what the early villainy ones want you to do is like they set you up for later or they set you up for going wide. But I think Major Von Reg just wants to go fast and face.
He's a glass cannon. Yeah, this is like the quintessential glass cannon leader of the set, where you're going to be able to front load a ton of damage, but you're very, very fragile. Like if you look at a lot of the villainy, the low cost villainy space stuff, it's all high attack, low health, right? So, again, you can play a bunch of stuff early on, but it doesn't take a lot to knock your board down, and he's very vulnerable to that kind of stuff. But if you are unopposed, he will end games very, very quick. So I think a top of B is a good spot for him. I don't think he's going to be very consistent, but I do think he's going to be a ton of fun to play. Like he's not high on my list, but he is a leader that I feel like if I did play, I would enjoy a lot. And he just looks cool too, and his ship is cool too. His ship is just
his
good
ship
in general,
is really cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I think top of B is fine for him. And that leaves us with one Charmer. That leaves us with one Wedge Antilles, all the way down with the W name. And Wedge seems really strong to me. I mean, no cost for the action. Play a card from your hand using piloting. So you have to use a piloting keyword. It costs one less. And that you have the requirement of needing a vehicle out to, put something on. So there is that. That's every leader has a hoop you have to jump through. That's his hoop. But that said, I think just anytime you can make things discounted, he essentially has like ramp sort of built into his leader ability, Yeah. I think that's really, really strong. I think this is the leader that I'm going to rate strong, but could end up being like just way better than everything else. Like he might just be like the best leader, but I don't think he is.
So
I don't think he is.
I'm
I think
on the other end of the
though.
spectrum. I think that he's strong with the potential to be very not good.
Really? Okay.
And my reasoning for this is because when you're actually dissecting what he's doing, like he is ramp, but unlike say like a Piet where you're always going to get the benefit even with an empty board, what he really is he's ramp when you have at least 2 cards. You have to have not just the ship, but also the card you're playing with piloting. So whenever you're taking advantage of his ability, what you really need is 2 cards. You need a vehicle and a pilot. And when you take that into account, what I think is going to happen is he might be strong to start, but when you get players that are like, okay, when I see Wedge, my first priority is always kill the vehicle that is readied, where now they don't get the instant like value out of a pilot. I think that we could see scenarios where he's slowed down significantly. So that's my concern. I don't discount his strength because any form of discounted cost or ramp in a game like this is always going to be really powerful, but his is situational in a way that your opponent can interact with or kind of like monkey with your ability to take the best advantage of it. And that concerns me.
The thing is, I think he doesn't, if they take out the readied space unit and you have a rested space unit, I don't think it's the worst thing to be able to play a cheaper pilot on them because you're going to be playing more stuff per turn. And like the advantage that a lot of heroism space stuff has is that it is higher health. It is harder to remove independently. So sure, you might not be able to attack with it this turn, but I think he's going to operate more as like a mid-range tempo-y kind of space leader, right? Where it's like, I don't care about necessarily attacking that turn. I just care about being able to put stats on the board for cheap, and build a board that's just hard to remove, right? And I think he's going to do a good job of that. I personally would put him in A just above Kazuda, but it sounds like you would put him a little bit lower. I think he's A though for sure.
I mean, yeah, I would have him lower personally until my worries are proven wrong. I just like he's got a lot of power potential, but what he requires, and also with him kind of like forcing things to go tall, I also worry if he could fall prey to like vigilance control specifically. Anytime where you have those decks that are very good at whack-a-mole, right?
Sure. But I mean, that's every mid-range deck of control, though. Like that's just how those archetypes interact.
But, sure, but like what he brings in that situation is so much like even worse than the other leaders in my mind, because now like you never, in my opinion anyway, you don't want to deploy him to the ground if you can help it.
Never.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would maybe be willing to put him like in the top of B. I think he's A, but I would maybe put him in the top of B. But
yeah, he's either like top of B, bottom A, somewhere in there. His ceiling is very high. I think you can put him behind Akbar.
I think he's better than Luke at least, and I think he'll be more consistent than Von Reg. Yeah, well, we'll put him there. We'll put him in A. Yeah, put him bottom of A. But like I said, I think he could just actually be amazing. He could just be a leader that people are able to play in a way where like that removal just isn't very impactful.
Yeah,
but we'll find out. Either way, that's our tier list. Do you feel good about it? Do you feel like you want to move anything now that we've got everything else out there?
I mean, me personally, sure. I would put Rose in front of
Rio.
Rio.
Yeah, I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to rearrange
Poor Rio,
that.
man.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, I'm dogging on you, Rio.
I don't think
but
he's D. I'm not gonna put him in D, but I
yeah.
could put Rose ahead of Rio, sure. Because I think you can do stuff with ambush with Rose. I do think you're underrating Rio, but I can't think of an argument that would make him say that he's better than Rose. So
Right, like that's
not a glowing a glowing review, but
endorsement. Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's an interesting tier list. I feel like people are going to have things to say about it. If you have things to say about it, join our Discord and say things. icecaveradio.com. We got merch. We got all this stuff. Join the Discord, though. That's the most important thing. And play these lists. Play these leaders and let us know what you think. And let us know in the comments below if you disagree with us completely. But if you agree with us, definitely tell us, too, because we like our egos, boosted like that. So do that, too. Anyway, this has been a marathon episode. This might be our longest episode ever, but I like it. I'm not complaining.
Well, and it also feels that way because through the power of editing, people don't realize that we've been trying to do this for like 6 hours throughout today.
Dude, like it has been. What is this dumb adulthood thing that we have to participate in? Why can't we just do Star Wars Unlimited all day?
All day, man.
I know. All right. Well, anyway, have fun editing this because I know there's a couple of moments where you're going to have to. But here's our tier list. I'll make sure I print it out and we can put it on things. And yeah, that's about it. Any final thoughts before we end the show? Before you do your line, or do you just want to do your line?
I'm just gonna do it.
Do the line.
So
say the thing.
May the force be with you.